afternoon and welcome to another exciting match in the 2026 staging of the public sector debate competition, the final match of the octa-final round. We are absolutely delighted to have you with us here at our offices at Saxthorpe Avenue, and we're just as thrilled to welcome those of you online. I am Tomika Gunmighty, Communication Specialist here at the Transformation Implementation Unit and your host for this afternoon's match. If you're just joining us, no worries. You can catch up and stay up to date with all the actions by subscribing to our YouTube channel at TIU_Jamaica. Since today, throughout this octa-final round, we've had 16 teams play in 8 matches. The National Fisheries Authority, National Environment and Planning Agency, Jamaica Customs Agency, Accountant General's Department, Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Mining, the Teaching Service, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Magotty High School, the Queen's School, the Jamaica Tourist Board, Administrator General's Department, Ministry of Health and Wellness. And now, continuing the action, our final match, we have the Jamaica Bauxite Mining Limited and the Jamaica Information Service, and they will be debating the moot. Be it resolved that Jamaica is achieving inadequate returns on its investment in tertiary education. I repeat, be it resolved that Jamaica is achieving inadequate returns on its investment in tertiary education. A very exciting moot for the final match of the round. Before we begin, we will turn our attention to our proponents, the Jamaica Bauxite Mining, as they introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, my name is Douglas Walker and I'm the team captain.
Good afternoon, Elia Cunningham, JBM.
Good afternoon, Sondre Roden, JBM.
Thank you so much to the Jamaica Bauxite Mining team. Now we turn our attention to the Jamaica Information Service as their team will introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, my name is Jada Francis.
Good afternoon, my name is Jody Ann Palmer.
Good afternoon, I'm Paul Allen.
Thank you so much to the team from the Jamaica Information Service. This afternoon's judges are our partners from the Jamaica Association for Debating and Empowerment, JADE. We ask that our judges introduce themselves.
Thank you, Tomika. Hi, everyone. I'm Jermaine Barrett. I'll be the chair adjudicator for this match. Best of luck.
Good afternoon, everyone. Kalisa Tivas. I'll be serving as a wing adjudicator. All the best.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jerome Reynolds, and I'll also be serving as a wing adjudicator. All the best.
Thank you so much to our team of adjudicators. Congratulations to both teams for making it here to the octa-final round. And this final match in this round, all the best to both teams. I now turn over to the judges.
Thank you, Tomika. Hi, everyone. You know the rules, but our viewing audience might not be so cognizant, so we will share the rules with them. So both teams having 3 debaters. The first debater will speak for 7 minutes, the second for 6, the third and final debater will present within 5 minutes. After the first 2 debaters have made their presentation, we'll enter the first period of cross-examination. After that period, we will then have another period of cross-examination after the second pair of speeches. After this second segment of cross-examination, we will pause for 1 minute. Thereafter, we will resume with the reply speeches, beginning with that from the opposition team. The debate then concludes with the reply speaker's presentation from the proposition team. Debaters, please take note of the time signals. You will hear a single ding of the bell indicating that you've spoken for 1 minute. Another ding of the bell signals that you have 1 minute remaining in your speech. 2 dings of the bell indicates that you have consumed the allotted time. Thereafter, 15 seconds, we will make heard continuous dinging of the bell to indicate that you are out of time. So after 15 seconds following the allotted time, you will hear continuous dinging of the bell. Now, for the first and second speakers, you will have the opportunity to answer points of information. So that's between your first minute up to your last minute. No points of information, though, are allowed in the reply speaker's presentation. Teams, are you ready? Oh, they don't sound to be well, irrespective of whether or not you are, we certainly are ready. So at this time, we call upon the first speaker on side proposition to open the debate. And of course, the proposition team hails from the Jamaica Bauxite Mining Limited.
Mr. Speaker, distinguished adjudicators, my worthy opponents, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to you all. Today we propose the moot, be it resolved that Jamaica is achieving inadequate returns on its investment in tertiary education. According to the Oxford Advanced Learners Dictionary, returns refers to the economic, social, and developmental outcomes generated from investment. According to the New Palgrave Dictionary of Economics, inadequate is defined as a failure to meet the required economic standard, typically focusing on market failures or resource. Investment in tertiary higher education is defined as a form of human capital accumulation. It involves the allocation of resources, such as funds, time, and effort, by individuals or government into post-secondary schooling to increase future productivity, labor market earnings, and wider social benefits. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we stand firmly in the moot, firmly in support of the moot by putting forward the following arguments. Firstly, the level of returns assessed by our monitoring and evaluation systems fall woefully short of targeted outcomes. My second speaker will show that Jamaica has not transformed its education population into one ready for innovation-driven economic growth. And finally, Jamaica is subsidizing the workforce of developed countries. Mr. Speaker, we won't speak in abstract. Let me firstly contextualize by saying that the World Bank and UNESCO have categorized Jamaica's return on education as, and I quote, a human capital crisis which is suppressing economic productivity. Contextually, Jamaica has clear, established, and expected returns for its investment in tertiary education. Vision 2030 expects tertiary education to transform the island into a globally competitive, knowledge-based economy. What are the expectations? Firstly, targeted investment in science, technology, and research, which applies science and technology to create a high-value knowledge hub. A new funding model to align institutional funding directly with national development goals and labor market demands. Expecting enrollment access, which creates highly skilled, adaptable, and certified workforce. These are the three pillars on which Jamaica's investment in tertiary education stands, and on which it shall be judged today. Mr. Speaker, any responsible government investment in tertiary education must yield adequate returns on investment, ROI, for the economic objectives to be achieved and sustainable. The key basic returns, therefore, must be higher economic growth, a skilled workforce for modern industries, higher income and employment for individuals, national productivity. The Caribbean Policy Research Institute, CAPRI, states that for the above national economic returns to be adequately achieved, public tertiary spending must directly align with labor market demands, which takes me straight into the proposition's first point, Mr. Speaker. The level of returns on tertiary education, as assessed by monitoring and evaluation experts, fall woefully short of targeted outcomes. What have the actual returns been? According to the experts, the glaring evidence shows that returns are suppressed due to labor markets' inability to fully absorb, compensate the development talent. Let us consider the following. First, higher on the list is over-education, which is one of the most direct evidence of a poor return, with approximately 17.5% of young workers being over-educated on their jobs and 17.8% feeling overqualified. The impact is that degree holders are working entry-level, low-skill jobs, glaring underutilization of human capital. Therefore, what are the expectations? First, targeted investment in science, technology, and research. New funding model, expanding enrollment access. These are the 3 pillars. Yes. Yes, go ahead.
You've said on at least 2 occasions that we're falling short of the benchmarks for output. You've not told us what those benchmarks are. You've just said we're falling short, so we don't know what it is we're aiming for or where we are at.
Thank you very much for that question. You follow me, and these are going to be answered now. For every $1 billion Jamaican dollars invested into tertiary education, approximately $180 million worth of human capital is at risk of being underutilized through poor labor absorption and skills mismatch. This represents a failed return. Costa Rica had this problem of over-education, and they had to reduce their labor market mismatch by aligning tertiary education with high-growth industries. Secondly, when an economy creates jobs in the wrong fields, the impact is that the fate of degree holders is dismal at best. It takes much time for approximately 70% of tertiary graduates to become gainfully employed, often over a year. And most opportunities are in wholesale and retail, which does not encourage innovation, leading to economic value added. Another failed return. Then there's the anomaly of over 40% of graduates saturating the business and management fields, while high demand areas like engineering and computer science will garner a mere 4% of graduates. Another failed return. Chile had this problem of job alignment, and that is why they implemented Startup Chile.
Point of information.
Yes.
You speak to the fact that there's a lack of capacity in absorbing the people who are coming from school. That doesn't say that tertiary education is failing, it's saying that the government is failing to provide jobs for the degrees that they're providing.
Thank you very much for that question. My second speaker is going to be addressing that in her presentation. I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, the devil is in the underlying root causes. Capri, in their 2025 education scorecard, highlights that current public spending on tertiary education is regressive, thus contributing to inequality, while 8 out of 10 Jamaicans aged between 19 and 24 years remain unenrolled in higher education, a recipe for inadequate returns. A Jamaica Observer 2026 report highlighted concerns about weak educational outcomes, teacher shortages, learning loss, and low effective learning, a recipe for inadequate returns. According to a World Bank report, Jamaica's tertiary sector suffers from an ongoing inability to deliver specific skills, attitudes, and soft skills required by the Caribbean labor market, signaling a disconnect from the labor market, a recipe for inadequate returns. Mr. Speaker, the above structural mismatches align with the Patterson report commissioned in 2021 by the government of Jamaica, which highlighted that government spending on tertiary education was not aligned with national development goals. We plan to align investment spend with more than adequate returns, Mr. Speaker, by disclosing our 4-point plan called Project Brain Jamaica, which will be articulated by our second speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, we intend to win the debate from the very onset, as we have thus far articulated beyond the logical refutation that in the investment spend is not aligned to development goals, there cannot be adequate returns. The proposition rejects any argument by the opposition which seeks to circumvent these facts. And so, Mr. Speaker, I rest my case as my very capable second speaker will now come to show that Jamaica has not transformed its education population into sustained innovation. I now pass to the second speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, first proposition speaker. We now call upon the first opposition speaker to open the opposition's case. Hear, hear.
Mr. Speaker, opponents, esteemed judges, before I begin, I would like to thank the proposition for stating that Jamaica is producing overeducated, overqualified persons. That means we are having a good and adequate return on investment in tertiary education. It means that we are outputting very qualified and skilled workers to build our nation. Rather than fix the economy and provide skilled jobs, the proposition is suggesting that we cut tertiary education, funding for tertiary education. Inadequacy is subjective and relative. Now, how do we measure the value of our people, their intellect and contributions made to this country with the smallest impacts? The opposition strongly rejects the proposition's case that Jamaica is not achieving adequate return on investment from tertiary education. They want us to believe that inadequate return on investment is simply saying we're not getting enough money in return for what we have poured in. What determines what is adequate? In the world of finance, one of the key pillars that constitute a good return on investment lies heavily on the investor, whether for wealth accumulation, income generation, or capital preservation. So in our world, that is to say that if your parents fund your education, their end goal is primarily to see you actualize that degree, that certification that gets you through the door, earning a salary that outcounts theirs, exhibiting independence and in some cases contributing to some form of social mobility. Now, because Jamaica is not only the government. Jamaica is the private sector. Jamaica is our parents and family members or communities. Jamaica is every citizen playing their part in building the whole human race.
On that point,
go ahead.
The proposition shows that for every $1 billion invested, 180 million worth of talent is at risk of economic underutilization. What standard is the opposition using to characterize those outcomes as adequate?
We'll get there. First of all, you did not outline what is adequate. Who equates adequate in, you did? Well, who equates adequate in our education? Are you saying that I'm inadequate? Now, as the first opposition speaker, I will show you that return on investment in education is broader than the opposition wants us to think, extending beyond salaries and professional mobility, but contributing to the long-term national development. The second speaker will explain the real issue is economic absorption capacity, not failed education investment, and how global employability is evidence of success. Now, my third speaker will reinforce that tertiary education drives social mobility and national functionality. Now, education is a nation-building investment and not an expense. So tertiary education should not be viewed simply as a short-term economic transaction where the only acceptable outcome is that every graduate secures a high-paying job in Jamaica immediately after graduation. In 2025, Jamaica allotted approximately $30.7 billion towards tertiary education, according to a report produced by Capri, an allocation which in the long run, not at this time, which in the long run can benefit us through better healthcare and education system, reduced poverty and greater social mobility, improved governance and public administration, stronger and more productive institutions, and national resilience. Now, in fact, according to our education minister, who is also a product of our tertiary investment, since the removal of tuition and administrative fees requirement at the Hart NSTA Trust, they have seen a 15% increase in enrollment. 50,000 Jamaicans have been certified. This includes, but not limited to, 90 members of the Jamaica Defense Force who graduated from the Amber Heart Academy, equipped with in-demand digital skills reflecting Jamaica's growing investment in national development. Also, following the devastation of Hurricane Melissa, Heart Trust trainees were commissioned for several reconstruction projects in Mission Rebuild Jamaica. 25 trainees helped to advance restoration efforts at the Jake's Hotel in Treasure Beach, St. Elizabeth. Now, these trainees are literally building back Jamaica. We benefit from leadership development, producing world-class thought leaders and critical thinkers, and from international influence and professional networks. Jamaica is a third world country that keeps producing first-class talent in all fields. That's what the Prime Minister, Dr. Andrew Holness, and former Education Minister in 2009 said. He said, and I quote, "Jamaica and the Caribbean have benefited significantly from the investment in tertiary education through our technical experts, leaders, business people, thinkers, philosophers, and poets that have defined us in this world." Now, this is reinforcing that the return on a tertiary education extends far beyond salaries and employment statistics. He's speaking about persons like President of the University of Technology, Dr. Kevin Brown, aerospace engineer and technical expert in complex and integrated aerospace structural system design, and a thought leader in transport systems. A past student of the University of Technology, beneficiary of a government scholarship, returning to reinvest in the students at the tertiary level under his tutelage.
On that point,
go Go ahead.
I realize that you're nitpicking a lot, but you're going away from the move, talking about the inadequate returns and its investment in education. Return on investment equals economic returns. And you can't be nitpicking 25 hard trainees and not looking at the problem. We are saying we want to get to at least less than 5%. Thank you.
You are saying that the only return of investment that you're looking for is financial. We are saying that that return on investment goes beyond finance. It goes to the personal goal of the person who is investing. So now, as I move on, Jamaica, now the Prime Minister is talking about you, my opponents, when they talk about thought leaders, technical experts, persons that they have invested in, they're talking about me. Because through entities like the Student Loans Bureau, an agency of the Ministry of Finance, many of us are able to earn our degrees, fund our degrees like myself. That is an investment in talent, and today that talent is given back directly to the country, just like yourself. Now, the sooner you start saving and investing is the more time your investment has to potentially grow. So a country does not invest in tertiary education simply to fill vacancies. It invests to develop human capital and strengthen society for the long term. The opposition rests.
All right, so we thank the first opposition speaker for tabling that speech. We now move to the first segment of cross-examination. We're going to invite now the questions from the opposition team, Team JIS. Those questions are going to be posed to the proposition team, Team Jamaica Bauxite Mining Limited. You may begin, JIS.
My opponents, you gave definitions that speak to social and economic returns being positives, yet you have said that over-education is a bad thing. So if this is a bad thing, then how are we providing a trained workforce if it is that you don't want to create the type of workforce that will...
I think that's time. Nobody said it's a bad thing. If you were listening clearly to the first speaker, what we're speaking about is a mismatch in the workforce. And that is clearly indicated when we're saying you're over-educated for a post. Let me draw on a master's graduate who is now at some BPO on Halfway Tree Road and can't get any of the other things that they want to go for. No management positions. Why? Because there isn't enough in the society, in the economy, for them to get. Which is not just an economic problem. It's because there's a linkage problem, which is why we spoke to Chile, we'll speak to Singapore, and we'll speak to Costa Rica, where they realized the same problem and had to find solutions where they can link tertiary institutions directly with the labor market, and then the economy gets productivity overall.
My opponents, you speak to labor absorption and over-education. If you are investing in the workforce that you want, why have you not also taken the same step to invest in the economy that the workforce can be absorbed into? You can't have your cake and eat it.
That's not actually accurate, because we have been investing in the economy. It is just the mismatch that exists, and that is because in investing in tertiary education, what we have is that we have development in silos. Development in silos is where tertiary education, you don't have focused training to say, hey, we want graduates in this area and that area more than the graduates in just business and management. We want more engineers, we want more computer sciences. When we then align everything, we ensure that we get down to that less than 5% of skills mismatch in our society, so that we can solve the problem of productivity. So we don't have to be importing a chief information technology officer from overseas. We'll have it homegrown in Jamaica, and they'll get in the systems, which Brain Jamaica will prove when the second speaker speaks, and we'll ensure that that skills mismatch problem is solved.
You keep speaking to a mismatch, but what evidence do you have that Jamaica's economic challenges are caused by tertiary education and not a broader structural limitation?
Well, what we're saying is that there is structural limitations, but we're saying this is a major part of the problem. Because when you look at productivity as an issue, we're talking about trained people. And recently, we saw the reports at an agency that we all know about, NSWMA, where we saw that there was positions that needed degrees and persons weren't in those positions, which means that in the society, across sectors, there are issues that we need to solve. But the best way to do it is to match tertiary education and the skills that we need aligned to those positions, so that those individuals, trained graduates, can get into those positions. So we don't have corruption, we don't have nepotism, because we'll already have a funnel system through Brain Jamaica that can fix all of those problems.
All right, so we thank the two teams for that segment of cross-examination. We now invite the proposition team to pose their questions to the opposition team.
Okay, first question. So, are you refuting the accuracy of an article by the GIS that the wider economic return for a country is lower than desired due to brain drain and underutilization of highly skilled graduates in the labor market?
The dispute isn't whether or not it's lower than expected. That's not what we're contending. What we're contending is that you keep limiting the returns on investments purely financial. Your very own definition said that the returns that we're looking for are economic, they're social, and they're structural. So if we have an overeducated population that can fill all the jobs your third speaker speaks about, clearly there are structural limitations, which is why you would have underqualified people in certain jobs. So removing education from the people who are least able to afford it isn't the solution. Fixing your economy would be a better solution.
You keep saying something that we never said. We never tried to underfund education. But how does the opposition justify the imbalance within a country seeking innovation-driven economic growth where 40% of graduates are in business and 4% are in science areas?
I fail to see how we speak about an underfunded populace when we already have an overqualified workforce for the jobs that are available. You keep trying to make points that say, we need to cut funding to education. That's what you said, and you've cited sources that included Chile that said they realized that there was an overeducated workforce and moved towards other things. What we're saying is that the workforce isn't the problem. In fact, we should be investing more in education. You need to be addressing the issues that exist within the economy. If we have an absorption problem, then the absorption is what we need to fix. We need to see what institutional issues there are so we can actually take in the people that we're producing. Why then would we be sending people through the educational system if not to provide a job and to contribute to the economy? So the inadequate returns that you're seeing is a fault of your own.
You keep mentioning something that we aren't mentioning, but we want to ask you what equivalent commercialization and innovation ecosystem currently exists within the Jamaican tertiary framework, whereby this funded tertiary system, they can go and have startups, etc.
Could you repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Can I repeat the question?
Yeah.
Right. I'm asking what equivalent commercialization and innovation ecosystem exists in Jamaica's tertiary framework, whereby tertiary graduates and students can start startups, etc.
What we also need to look at is that there seems to be a limited look at what tertiary in Jamaica refers to. The World Bank refers to tertiary as universities and also post-secondary schools. You're just looking at the University of the West Indies and UTEC. So if it is that we're looking at tertiary education as a whole, there are programs that are put in place by the Hard Trust and STA where students who come there and they're able to matriculate throughout their programs are given internships and subsequently placed into jobs. So those structures already exist.
All right, thank you. Thanks to both teams. We continue now with the presentation from the second speaker from the Jamaica Bauxite Mining Limited team proposition. Hear, hear.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me fix the mic so I can be extremely clear so that the opposition can understand precisely what we're debating and what we're talking about. No point did we say we would be cutting funding for education. And it seems that you are trying to put forward that it is fine just to have an overqualified population. But listen, if I have an apple tree outside and it's bearing bright, beautiful apples and they fall and I have no market to take them to, the apples go spoiled. An overqualified population cannot be something that we accept. But anyways, listen, my first first speaker, ladies and gentlemen, this afternoon would have outlined that Jamaica has established expected returns for its investment in tertiary education, and the level of returns assessed by the monitoring and evaluation systems fall short of targeted outcomes. Today, I aim to deepen this reasoning by outlining 2 arguments and then present a 3-point plan, the same plan that you're saying that we need. I'm going to present that to you this afternoon. That provides a reasonable and equitable solution to this challenge, right? It would be remiss of me then to not take the opposition to school this afternoon. So I rise to prove that Jamaica's return on tertiary education are not just insufficient, they are structurally inadequate. So point 1, Mr. Speaker, Jamaica has not converted its educated human resource into sustained innovation-driven economic growth. Jamaica sat the exams, they did all the assessments, and unfortunately we have failed the test, Mr. Speaker, when we evaluated the country's ability to function as an engine of innovation and economic transformation. We have not converted it into innovation-driven economic growth. Accepted?
If Jamaica has not converted its tertiary graduates into economic engines, that's an issue for the government, not for the workforce. You're not providing jobs for them.
The most that we are debating is whether or not the if we are receiving the returns on our investment. At this time, we're saying we're receiving inadequate returns on those investments, and we're putting forward a plan that will solve this challenge that we're facing. So currently, in the pipeline, meaning the pipeline for universities into innovation, enterprise creation, and industrial expansion is unclear. For example, Singapore has effectively linked its universities to industries and innovation ecosystems, and research is consistently converted into high-value enterprise sectors like biotech, manufacturing, creating a clear pipeline from education to economic transformation. In Jamaica, however, research remains largely within the academic institution and is not commercialized. For example, the UEM research that is still in the pipeline since 2017, and the impact of this, ladies and gentlemen, is clear. Low productivity, weak competitiveness, and dependence on low-value sectors. We're investing in knowledge and failing to convert it into national wealth, and this is exemplary in the low economic growth numbers that we see, which is currently under 5%. It is not about the number of graduates, it is about what those graduates are able to do, and this proves that Jamaica has not been converting its educated human resource into innovative-driven economic development. This brings me to point 2, ladies and gentlemen, where Jamaica is actually subsidizing the workforce of developing countries. Currently, developed countries, rather. According to the Jamaica Observer, nearly 40% of Jamaicans live abroad, including thousands of teachers, nurses, and other professionals. This means that we invest in the talent, but we are unable to retain it long enough to benefit from that investment. In Chile, as similar developing countries, universities are linked to key industries such as mining, agrotechnology, and energy through industry partnerships. Thus, graduates are able to contribute to productive export-oriented industries that strengthen their economy. So we ask in Jamaica, where is the expansion into industries such as technology, mining, coastal engineering, agriculture, renewable energy? And the third, ladies and gentlemen, the systems fail not only the state, but the Jamaican families. Families are sacrificing through loans, savings, expecting upward mobility, yet many graduates earn low wages, struggling with job stability, and delay major life milestones to return inadequate. It is returning inadequately, both nationally and at the household level. Accepted?
Are you saying that the government is not investing to the human capital for these fields? Is that what you're saying?
We are not saying that. Obviously, we are investing in the human capital. We are talking about the alignment. There is a clear misalignment in the investment and then what is provided for economic development. So the report card at this time might not be looking so good, but luckily, as teachers say, there is room for improvement. And this is where, ladies and gentlemen, we present Plan Brain Jamaica, a 3-point plan with the sole focus of building retention, advancement, and innovation nationally. Point 1 under this: optimize talent retention within tertiary pathways. We're maximizing what already exists by embedding them directly into the tertiary journey, thus making structured local services, paid national placement, and sector-specific graduate pipelines a standard part of university progression, so that public investment in education guarantees immediate measurable contributions to Jamaica's priority sectors. 2, under Brain Jamaica, we're strategically aligning the workforce, where we're strengthening existing labor planning systems by directly linking tertiary funding and program expansion to national skills shortages in areas like like STEM, healthcare, logistics, renewable energy, and cybersecurity using real-time workforce forecasting. And 3 on the Brain Jamaica, innovation to industry graduation standard. We're reforming the tertiary education so that innovation is not optional but required. So in areas such as business, entrepreneurship, students must complete a practical venture, enterprise solution, or commercialized project before graduating, turning universities into engines of applied economic output. This plan is designed to respond directly to the core problem that is established in this debate. That is ROI on tertiary education by ensuring that education becomes structurally linked to national productivity, innovation, and retention of talent. Because right now, Jamaica is in a system where we educate for export, we train for underutilization, and we invest without guaranteed return. So when we revisit the question of adequacy of returns, the answer then becomes no longer theoretical, it becomes structural, it becomes measurable, and it becomes improved across all sectors and across all parts of our development. Thank you.
We thank the second proposition speaker there for her presentation, and now move to the second opposition speaker to hear how it is that they develop their team's case. Here.
Esteemed adjudicators, our opponents have presented their arguments rather passionately. Their claims of low productivity, brain drain, and misallocated funding paint a rather grim picture of our country's investment. The opposition firmly rejects this position. We intend to provide a balanced perspective, highlighting the actual returns being achieved from its investment in education. My colleague established the framework of our argument, providing much needed clarity on our understanding of what a return on investment really looks like. I will now further expand our argument by addressing 3 main areas of focus. First, tertiary education strengthens essential national systems, providing structural economic anchoring and macro planning solutions. Second is remittances and diaspora capital through migration economics. Third is the incentive for growth in the modern services economy. Jamaica's return on tertiary education cannot be solely measured by salaries attained after graduation and the often touted brain drain. It must be evaluated by significant societal and institutional gains reaped by the country, most notably during national crisis. The return is evident through the technical and multidisciplinary capacity it provides to national planning frameworks. According to the PIOJ and the UE Climate Studies Group, this capacity provides an internal defense against external macroeconomic and environmental shocks. The PIOJ noted that during severe economic disruptions, such as Hurricane Melissa, the state relies on locally trained economists, agricultural scientists, and public policy experts to employ data-driven modeling to stabilize the economy. The COVID-19 pandemic response demonstrated the exceptional performance of our highly skilled workforce. It was marshaled by tertiary educated professionals overseeing institutional research.
On that point?
Not accepted. The UE provided critical modeling, epidemiological tracking, and diagnostic capabilities. Partnerships formed between the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries and local tertiary institutions help develop drought-resistant crops and smart climate farming solutions that protect our domestic food supply and bolster climate resilience. Furthermore, local academia produces Caribbean-specific research that directly informs the socio-economic strategies of the government as well as that of CAPRI. This is a direct return that has long-lasting effects on the country's current and future economic standings. These examples demonstrate that investment in tertiary education creates a national security blanket of expertise. Moreover, a country cannot use uncredentialed workforce to construct sophisticated development roadmaps like Vision 2030. If there were not accepted. If there are no significant investments in tertiary institutions, the state would be forced to outsource national security, climate planning, and macroeconomic forecasting. The return is not accepted. The return is realized when the nation can look into its own local expertise to solve its own existential crisis, thereby saving the country millions of dollars. Or second point, not accepted. The proposition will certainly beat the argument of brain drain till they're drained themselves. The migration of tertiary students does not equate a complete and total loss of economic productivity. In fact, it transforms the local investment into a highly profitable transnational stream of financial and intellectual returns. Look no further than the investment made during Hurricane Melissa. The Bank of Jamaica consistently reports that remittance inflows account for approximately 20% of Jamaica's GDP. That is roughly $3 billion or more annually. Additionally, empirical research on migration economics reveal that highly skilled, tertiary educated immigrants typically send higher volumes of remittances in comparison to low-skilled migrants. Moreover, these tertiary educated migrants also facilitate knowledge remittances by providing funding to university endowments. They also return as consultants, set up transnational or local businesses. Now, data from the Commonwealth Secretariat revealed that small state diasporas possess immense investment potential, noting that highly educated members of the diaspora were willing to accept lower margins to fund domestic ventures. An important example of global employability as evidence of success, not failure, is the CMU. The CMU prepares students for careers in maritime industry, including international shipping logistic industries. Although Jamaica currently does not have the capacity to absorb these local graduates, this is not a reflection of a failed investment. It is clear that the investment in tertiary education has expanded Jamaica's economic footprint globally. Migrants possess an emotional and financial connection to their homeland and utilize their credentials to accumulate significant wealth. This is then returned to Jamaica through direct foreign investments, venture capital, and progressive professional consulting. This exchange of local investment sees a return of hard foreign currency in the country's domestic economy. This transaction represents an extraordinary macroeconomic return, thereby stabilizing the net international reserves and funding the welfare of thousands of Jamaican households, therefore making tertiary education a high-yielding export industry for the country. The opposition rests its case.
We thank the second speaker from Team Opposition. We now move to the second segment of cross-examination. In this segment, we'll invite now the proposition team to pose their questions to the opposition team. Each question is limited to 10 seconds. Each response limited to 45 seconds.
Sorry, ready, judges? We're asking the question. All right. Right, so you speak of technical capacity, yet still in COVID-19, Melissa, etc., Jamaica has gone to the World Bank, IMF, all those individuals to get technical expertise. So clarify what you speak of in your statement.
Jamaica has some amazing technical experts here. And you speak to COVID-19 and the fact that Jamaica had to go to multilateral entities as if we're the only nation that suffered from COVID-19. Countries across the world were all shut down. Everyone suffered economically. So if it is that we're looking at Jamaica's need to seek outside assistance, then that's hardly an indicator of our stability or the education of our workforce. What we need to be looking at more is why is it that coming out of COVID, we've not seen the types of developments being put into the sectors where you claim that our overeducated people are focusing on.
Additionally, it does not indicate, I clearly stated, that the government relied and used local expertise.
How does the opposition explain Jamaica's continued struggle with productivity growth and labor mismatch despite the Vision 2030 expectations that envision tertiary education as a driver of innovation, productivity, and economic transformation?
if there's a labor mismatch, it's not because we have an overeducated population, it's because the jobs that are there don't align with the education that's being provided. So the solution is not to cut education, the solution is to make the tertiary options that are there more skewed towards what we're moving towards as an economy.
Additionally, I realize you made sure to make a link between economic output and the investment in education. The fact that we are producing graduates is an indicator that the purpose of the investment has been achieved. We have an educated workforce.
No. So, how does the opposition then quantify the economic and social and technological value that Jamaica is actually retaining from its investment in education, in tertiary education rather?
Well, if you look across all sectors in Jamaica, every institution that we have is led by people that are tertiary educated. All the highly skilled fields are people who would have gone through post-secondary training at Hart, at Polytechnic Institute. All of these things are being driven by people who receive tertiary education, and the country is now benefiting from that. The two aren't separated.
We understand that there is definitely going to be an economic component that needs to be dealt with by fiscal policy. We are contending that the investment that the government has made has produced its returns by giving us an educated workforce.
Thank you, both teams, for that phase of cross-examination. We continue now as we invite the questions from the opposition team to the proposition team.
You keep speaking to the benchmarks that we're missing for our returns on investment. Can you right now, in this moment, list one benchmark with an actual empirical figure and where we are at, where that's concerned, locally?
Right. One benchmark we're talking about is the economic misalignment in terms of labor, where we are saying that there should be less than 5% of our economy in terms of labor and skills that is misaligned. Because the minute it is over that 5%, we have a problem in terms of productivity. We see that productivity problem that the Prime Minister, other ministers have spoken to time and time again, and it continues to go across our sectors. I've spoken earlier about the BPO sector. We can talk about engineering, etc., all those other sectors where there is a lack and a gap. And now we're seeing companies across Jamaica, Wisynco, etc., asking for skilled labor. Actually, last year they're saying that they want to import skilled labor. So if you don't see that benchmark, then opposition, you really need to start looking clearly.
Does that misalignment that you refer to, is it evidence that we have not produced an educated workforce, that we have not met that return?
Repeat that question, please.
You speak of misalignment. What we want to know from you is the fact that we have produced, that the government has reaped its returns on education by producing an educated workforce. How does that misalignment, how does that reflect? I lost my train of thought. I hope I've made it myself clear. No, I have not. All right, you speak of misalignment, right? I'm asking you if the fact that we have produced an educated workforce, does that negate the fact that the misalignment exists?
Well, I'm trying to factor in what you're saying effectively, but what I can say is that producing persons that are educated is separate and apart from the argument about misalignment, because what we're saying is that we do have educated individuals. What we're saying that we do have overqualified, we do have underemployed, we do have unemployed individuals. We want to solve all of those problems through connecting industry with tertiary education. And you rightfully said and agreed with us, tertiary is not just university, tertiary skills. Now, the problem we're having is that at my very home, if I want a carpenter to come, it's hard to find one. We are saying that we want to have pathways through Brain Jamaica where we can have those skills aligned with out there persons who have companies, and they can end up building those skills through Brain Jamaica.
So
proposition. With all that said, could you give us an example? Just tell us, what does adequate return of investment on human capital looks like?
Adequate return on investment over time will look like economic growth in the long run. It would look like social mobility across sectors. It would look like alignment between the tertiary education, and actually what is happening is that we will have better competitiveness and we will have less dependence on low-value sectors. That is having 95% alignment between tertiary educated individuals and actual jobs in the labor market. And we did not limit our plan to just work and workforce. We also spoke to entrepreneurship. So we want to open up that sector of innovation to increase productivity, which can lead to economic growth, which can lead to overall national development, which can lead to the development of Vision 2030. And that is how we achieve what we've been saying in this debate.
All right, so thank you very much, both teams. We now will take a 1 minute pause, after which we'll resume with the reply speeches, beginning with that from the opposition team, concluding with the final presentation from the third speaker on side proposition. Teams, your 1 minute pause begins now. That signals the end of the 1 minute pause. Welcome back to the debate. We now call upon the third speaker from team opposition. That is the opposition's reply speaker to conclude the case on behalf of that side of the team. Jamaica Information Service, go right ahead.
They say there's a gap, and the solution is to punish tertiary educated people. They say there's misalignment, and the solution is to remove focus from tertiary education. They say we are an overeducated populace, and the solution is to make the population less smart. They say returns are economic, social, and institutional, but their entire debate has focused on limiting Jamaicans to dollars and cents. They're debating a workforce issue, and we're here to debate an issue that speaks to the returns on investments in tertiary education. Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. Nelson Mandela. Mr. Speaker, today's debate is not solely about the economic returns of a country when advancing tertiary education. It is also about the benefits a society, a family, and an individual can gain when given the opportunity to go further. We acknowledge that as an island of 2.7 million people with sectors that historically have not achieved the value-added draw that they could, that notwithstanding, we have achieved something remarkable. We must move beyond the proposition's myopic view and look at the multiplier effect of tertiary qualification. We maintain that Jamaica benefits tremendously from the investments we have made in tertiary education. Mr. Speaker, Jamaica is receiving adequate and meaningful returns from tertiary education because it drives both social mobility and national functionality. I put it to you that social mobility is one of the most important national returns on tertiary education. The warrant here is simple. Tertiary education is instrumental in fostering growth, reducing poverty, and boosting shared prosperity. Tertiary education, which includes all formal post-secondary education, develops skills and prepares young people for jobs. It benefits not just the individual, but the entire nation. The impact here, Mr. Speaker, is that a highly skilled workforce with lifelong access to solid tertiary education and training is a prerequisite for innovation and growth. Well-educated people are more employable and productive. They earn higher wages and cope with economic shocks better. The World Bank notes that tertiary education significantly reduces poverty and drives upward mobility, as degrees provide a pathway to higher value jobs. Additionally, studies show that every additional year of education increases the earning potential by roughly 9 to 10%, but the benefits go far beyond that. The effect of a young Jamaican being the first in his or her family to receive tertiary education is wide-reaching and significant. That is not a degree for that person. It's a step towards increased earning potential and an elevated standard of living, not just for him and her, but also for their family. It shows that a vulnerable population that this is possible when one of our own does what was previously considered undoable. This brings us back to the proposition's inaccurate and problematic claim that returns are almost exclusively profit by the government, when the implications for national development are clear. Our argument here is simple. Jamaica's low unemployment rate is proof that investment in tertiary education is producing adequate and meaningful economic and social returns. Jamaica's unemployment rate is 3.3%, one of the lowest in the country's history. This is closely tied to the growth of tertiary education and skills training, which have created a more qualified and employable workforce. Tertiary institutions prepare people for industries such as healthcare, education, logistics, finance, technology, and business services, sectors that are increasingly requiring training and professional certification. So it's not that we're overeducated, the government just hasn't provided the jobs for our workforce. As more Jamaicans gain these qualifications, more people will be able to access stable employment and better economic activities. What's more, tertiary education graduates enjoy an estimated 17% increase in earnings. The impact of that is a more employable population, lower unemployment, and a stronger, more resilient national economy. In 2023, Jamaica's then Minister of Finance and notable return on our investment in tertiary education, Nigel Clark, said Jamaica's growth and development depends critically on human capital. Human capital development is a priority for the government of Jamaica, he said then. Key to achieving this is equitable access to quality education. Our claim has been consistent and strong. Jamaica's investment in tertiary education has produced substantial national returns because educated people are what sustain and improve a modern society. In their dystopian view, the returns are lacking, but they cannot distinctly say what more educated Jamaicans need to do. The proposition has failed to clearly state what is an adequate return on investments and have offered no suitable counters to our points that Jamaica has benefited tremendously from investments in tertiary education. My worthy opponents, Jamaica will not become globally competitive by investing less in its primary resource, its people. Without tertiary education, Jamaica would be replete with weaker institutions, poorer governance structures, and reduced administrative competence. Do not conflate imperfect returns for failed investment. Mr. Speaker, the opposition has made its final submission. We firmly, fully, and confidently rest.
We thank the third speaker from the opposition team, the opposition reply, for concluding Team JIS's case. At this time, ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome the third and final speaker in this debate from the proposition side. Let us make that reply speaker welcome. Hear, hear.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I start this speech, I want to say the burden of the proof on the proposition was to prove that be resolved that Jamaica is achieving inadequate returns on its investment in tertiary education. Burden of proof on the opposition was to prove the adequacy, and they have not. The opposition first speaker spoke to adequate returns because our workers are skilled. Well, yes, we did say our workers are skilled. Then they said we should not cut funding. We're not arguing cutting funding. We never said that. They tried to understand what is adequate. We gave them a number, and we said that we want to achieve at least 95% of our populace aligned properly with the workforce that exists. And of course, they spoke about return on investment is broader. But when they give you that myopic view, they're saying that they can't understand that they cannot divorce social returns from economic returns, because through social mobility, you're going to get Jackie that job, and then Jackie is going to earn an income, and that's money, and that's an economic return. So you can't divorce the two. The second speaker spoke about actual return. I dealt with that. The next speaker spoke about strengthening macroeconomics and the technical capacity. And I said to them clearly that if our technical capacity is so great, we don't need to go to World Bank, IMF, all the other IFIs that we go to help us technically in Jamaica. I spoke to that. They spoke about remittances being highly profitable. And I want to say to them, despite that 20%, are you saying then that we should just be training all of these people for them to just leave and give a developed country all our skills and talents just to get remittances? What about what is spent in the earned economy? That's important as well. And of course, the third speaker came and he spoke about social mobility and poverty reduction, which is an economic marker. And he just introduced new arguments after new arguments, low unemployment rate. None of their speakers introduced that before. That's a brand new argument that doesn't come in this debate. Now I'll get to my clashes. Firstly, value versus adequate return. The opposition is saying tertiary education still has value because graduates earn more and it improves social mobility and education benefits society. Well, the proposition never denied that tertiary education has value. Our argument is that Jamaica is not receiving the returns proportionate to the scale of investment being made. The opposition proved that benefits exist. The proposition proved that outcomes remain inadequate because returns are measured by outcomes, not intentions. Proposition showed that nearly 18% of Jamaica's educated workforce is underutilized through overqualification, overeducation, labor mismatch between graduate output and economic needs, weak labor absorption, which means that we have Plan Brain Jamaica, where we solve all of those problems. And if approximately 18% of the educated human capital is underutilized, then that means we're losing about $180 million worth of talent. If we're looking at $1 billion, that is not adequate return. That is economic leakage. Second clash, brain drain versus national development. Migration is normal, the opposition says, but the proposition agrees. Migration is normal, but what is not normal is brain depletion. Jamaica is not losing excess labor. Jamaica is losing strategic labor, teachers, nurses, engineers, technology professionals, researchers, the very people required to modernize the economy. Nearly 40% of them live abroad, including thousands of highly trained professionals. That means Jamaica continues to invest heavily in human capital that is locally sometimes, while wealthier economies disproportionately capture the productivity, the innovation, the expertise, and tax contributions associated with that investment. And we spoke about that. That's a part of economic growth. So remittances, they don't replace lost productivity, weaken institutions, labor shortages, or innovation capacity, and that is what we're arguing. The opposition normalizes these losses instead of confronting their economic consequences. A nation cannot claim adequate return while underutilizing the very talent it invests billions to produce. Now, the final clash, the structural misalignment and the productivity failure. Now, the opposition will say the economy is the issue. Tertiary education is not the issue. Well, our argument says clearly that it strengthens our case, because our argument was never that universities alone are failing. No, our argument is that Jamaica's broader tertiary ecosystem is failing to convert educational investment into sufficient national development outcomes. Now, we showed that, and we're saying that if we have 40% of the graduates being business management graduates, and then we only have 4% who are skills and engineering and computer science, that means there is a mismatch. That's 10 times the amount. That is not strategic workforce planning. That, of course, is economic misalignment. Why the proposition wins? Proposition wins because we proved that Jamaica is not maximizing the value in education. And what we have presented is Brain Jamaica, building retention, advancement, and innovation nationally. A strategy designed to retain local talent, to align education with labor market demands, and to strengthen innovation and STEM sectors. Countries like Chile and Singapore are countries we've used, and Costa Rica, and that is why we win the debate, because it's pro-development, pro-productivity, and pro-accountability and national transformation. Thank you.
Well. Thank you, both teams, for a valiant attempt at winning this debate, but the decision as to who wins comes down to the panel of adjudicators. So while we await that decision, I turn over now to our moderator, who will bring this segment to a close.
Thank you so much, Jermaine. I don't know if they're overeducated, but we can all agree that their arguments were highly intellectual. Give the teams another round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, the arguments have been made in this final match of the octafinal round. And let me not stand between you and your scores and the winning team, the last team that will enter the quarterfinals of this competition for this year. So stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. The judges will adjudicate and we will be right back with the winning scores.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the conclusion of the match that just unfolded. We saw a contest between the Jamaica Bauxite Mining Limited on-side proposition, and opposing them was the Jamaica Information Service. They really debated whether or not we're receiving adequate amounts of return on investment from investments in tertiary education. The characterization of the bauxite team has to do with the extent to which there is misalignment, underemployment, and just a lack of capacity with respect to tertiary education investment. They spoke as well about the significant brain drain that results from persons who have gone through the tertiary education process and leave to go overseas to invest in foreign lands as opposed to staying and building the Jamaican economy and Jamaican society. Now, from the outset, a number of the concerns of Team Proposition were flagged by Team JIS opposition as not being reflective of deficits with tertiary education. They say that it is the government not providing adequate jobs, and that there are mechanisms that need to be instituted separate and apart from tertiary education to solve for the deficits like brain drain and underemployment that is highlighted consistently by the proposition team. We think, though, that tertiary education does have a role to play. And Team Proposition contends that the model that exists in Chile is a useful model for us to adopt in the Jamaican context. And how is it that they intend to adjust tertiary education in our context to meet with the better objectives that they're pursuing? They want to link the tertiary education institution to segments of the economy that are driving economic growth and job creation. They want to sort of align more what the economy demands with what is being produced by the tertiary sector. They want greater innovation, and that greater innovation, they contend, will come about, as happened in Chile, if it is that we achieve that greater levels of alignment. There was a consistent seeming misunderstanding as to what the proposition's model entails. So much so that side opposition thought that proposition was about reducing expenditure on the tertiary sector. We felt that that was not the case of side proposition. Side proposition instead wanted to shift resources in the way that would have been existent within the Chilean model. I want to credit them for that strategic move. On side opposition, we get a litany of examples of ways in which tertiary graduates have in fact contributed meaningfully to the development of the Jamaican economy. We hear that during COVID-19, we were able to tap into the intellectual capacities that exist in Jamaica to help us to wade through that very turbulent experience. But at the same time, we hear from side proposition that we had to be borrowing expertise from the IDB and other foreign institutions because presumably the kinds of expertise that were needed were lacking in the Jamaican context. We think that by and large, the misalignment is problematic. We think that by and large, insofar as we're investing as much as we are in the tertiary sector, that for us to get more, that investment needs to be tuned to areas of the economy that that once invested in these areas of the tertiary sector, more will be earned and there will be more economic benefit. We agree with side opposition that some of the solution comes about through government intervention, and intervention probably even in the private sector that is separate and apart from the tertiary sector. But insofar as this debate focused on the tertiary sector and whether or not it is calibrated to produce sufficient impacts to grow the economy and to develop the Jamaican society to a great extent, we felt that there was adequate engagement of that particular concern and resolution of that concern existent within the tertiary sector. So ladies and gentlemen, 286, that's the score for the winning team. And that compares to 271. Before I announce the winner, though, I just want to highlight that this kind of debate does not presume that there is not positive outcomes in the world of tertiary education. So we do accept the submissions of team opposition that there are ways in which tertiary graduates are improving meaningfully the Jamaican economy and are investing their head, heart, and hands to uplifting the society overall, right? What this debate really speaks about is what exactly is the macroscopic picture. And the team that proves that is, in fact, the team that wins this debate. Winning on 286 points in this, the octafinals match of the public sector debate competition for 2026. The team that advances to the quarterfinal round, ladies and gentlemen, the Jamaica Bauxite Mining Limited. That's the proposition team. Now, on the proposition team, we had two speakers that were fairly strong, one of whom will be announced in a matter of a few seconds as being the best debater. But I want to highlight them both. The second and third speakers on the proposition team were fairly strong in terms of the contribution in this match. But the overall best debater is, ladies and gentlemen, the third speaker from the Jamaica Bauxite Mining Limited's team. And so, ladies and gentlemen, with that, we draw these proceedings to a close. We've just now concluded the octafinals round, and we now move in about 2 or so weeks from now into the quarterfinals round. It's really, really getting intense. The commitment and the exchanges are going to intensify as we go forward. And so we're expecting that you will join us at that time for another slate of scintillating matches. Until then, take care.